Let's talk about buttonholes and how to make a buttonhole on our machine. I've sewn hand buttonholes in the past, and I can tell you that's not fun. My first machine, you had to manually make buttonholes, which are the buttonholes that you see here, 416 through 419, but 41 through 411 and even 412, well, actually through 415. All of these are automated buttonholes, and there's also an eyelet stitch that you can make. But we're going to make buttonhole 407. It's a narrow squared buttonhole. And let's talk about our buttonhole foot that goes with our machine. Let me move my camera so you can see it with me so I can get in focus. I apologize. Okay. This is your foot, and this is the A foot. And one thing that you notice, that there's this plastic piece in the back that you can squeeze it so that you can put your button inside the back of this foot and just slide this piece of plastic back down so that it's tight. You want to make sure that it is tight because you don't want to sew buttonholes that are too large. And one thing that I would suggest that you always do is sew out a test buttonhole, because every machine makes a buttonhole differently. On this particular machine, what's going to happen is it's going to sew backwards and come forward, and it's going to sew each of the sides. You need to know the way the machine moves. And most of us, when we're going to sew a buttonhole, we'll mark our fabric so that we can sew a buttonhole in a particular position. So I need to know how the machine's going to move so that I can do that. Whenever you make a buttonhole, you want to make sure that your fabric is interfaced. If it's not, you need to put some sort of stabilizer. This is a tearaway that I have, so that you can get a good looking buttonhole. Now, when you put this foot on your machine, you notice there's a space here, and this space is where a gray bar on the side of your machine needs to come down, because what it does is it goes from the back of this post to the white piece that is protruding, and that's where it tells it to stop and come forward again. So let's snap our foot with the A facing us on our machine. Okay, it's on. And now what we want to do is we want to move that gray bar so it's down behind the piece of metal. And let me move my camera over so you can see that. If you notice right here, this gray bar has been pulled down so it's behind that piece of metal. Now let me set my camera back up. There we go. And what I'm going to do is, you always want to take your thread and pull it out to the side. I'm just going to start in a place because I want to show you how the buttonhole makes. And I'll start sewing. And you need to make sure that buttonhole lever is all the way down, or you'll get an error message. I just did. Alright, so now my machine is going to sew back, sew forward, then it's going to do a zigzag stitch over those straight stitches that it made. It's sewing forward again, do another leg, and now it's going to sew back, and then what it'll do is close off the end, and when it finishes, then it will stop. And this is the point where you can do one of two things. You can take your needle up by sewing the needle down position, pull your threads to the back and tie it off, or you can just cut your threads. Let's look at that buttonhole. It actually looks very nice. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's a nice clean looking buttonhole. So let's try sewing one with a mark that I made on my fabric. And you've got to understand that I have a camera in front of me, so it's not nearly as easy to do as it would be if I was doing this without my machine being back about 1.5 feet from me. So the first thing I want to do is I want to line this up. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for my needle to be near that piece and my fabric to be straight And what I can do is put my needle down. Let me start again. If you ever need to start again, just go out of your menu and go back into it, just to make sure that your machine is set up correctly. Okay, and now what I want to do is line it up so that I can see my needle right above the buttonhole. Alright, I think I've got it. Let me put my foot down and let me start sewing. Okay, here's my buttonhole. It's not too bad considering. Now, one of the things that you want to do is you want to take a pin and you want to place that pin so that it is in front of this, the end of this buttonhole. You want to make sure that you don't cut any farther than where you place your pin. And then after you've done that, you can take your seam ripper and you can just cut from here to this point, and your pin will stop you. And I managed to not have a seam ripper in front of me, so we'll have to pretend that I cut it with the seam ripper. Alternatively, you can take a pair of scissors and you can cut it. I prefer to use the seam ripper though.